mom took out a loan in my name, then called me selfish for refusing to help pay it back. I nearly dropped my phone when it started vibrating in my pocket that afternoon. It was my day off from the diner, and I was in the cereal aisle at the grocery store, debating between a name brand and a generic. The call came from a number I didn't recognize, but I picked up anyway, half hoping it might be a potential second job I'd recently applied for. Instead, a clipped male voice introduced himself as Bill from Rivercrest Collections and began rattling off past due amounts, late fees, and the legal ramifications that would soon follow if I continued to ignore the debt in question. At first, I just stood there, stunned. Debt? What debt? He spoke with such certainty, so I managed to spit out a protest. I'm sorry, you must have the wrong person. I don't have any outstanding loans. Bill didn't miss a beat. He coldly repeated my full name, my date of birth, my address, like he was reading off a rap sheet, and insisted that I was responsible for a credit account that was severely delinquent. My stomach lurched. None of this made sense. By the time the call ended, I could barely focus on the shelves of cereal before me. My mind was churning. Either this was a scam, or someone had taken a loan in my name. I abandoned my shopping cart and hurried back to my car. My fingers shook as I tried to pull up my banking app on my phone. Nothing looked amiss there, but I realized I needed more thorough credit information than a simple checking account balance could show. I decided to drive home immediately, all the while replaying Bill's words. This is your final warning. We will pursue further action if you don't respond. I felt nauseous, imagining lawsuits and wage garnishments. I lived in a small apartment in suburban Ohio, just scraping by with tips from the diner and some shifts at a local bookstore. I had never even considered taking out a big loan. Where would I find the money to pay back something I never took out in the first place? At home, I fumbled to unlock my front door, kicked off my shoes, and dropped onto the couch with my laptop. I ran a free credit check. To my horror, there it was. A personal loan for over $10,000, opened just 3 months ago, with my name and social security number attached. My heart pounded so fiercely I thought I might pass out. How on earth did this happen? I'd been careful about protecting my information. I scrolled further, my palms damp. The account was past due by nearly 2 months with mounting fees. All I could think was that someone had stolen my identity. But who? And why? I started to call the collection agency back, determined to clear this up as a mistake. Then a flicker of a thought crossed my mind. My mom had mentioned money troubles recently. Diane, my mother, was a woman who often found herself juggling bills in inventive ways. Over the years, I'd seen her slip behind on rent, on utilities, on car payments. She was always searching for some sort of quick fix, like payday loans or friendly "I owe us" from neighbors. Could she have? No, that was unthinkable. Yet dread curled in my gut. She had my date of birth, my social security number. I remembered the times she'd asked me for help paying her credit card bills. When I refused, she'd given me a silent treatment for weeks. Could it be possible she resorted to using my name? Before I let myself go down that path, I dialed my mom's number to see if she knew anything. She didn't pick up. Frustration simmered beneath my fear. I tried calling 3 more times before I finally left a voicemail. Hey, Mom. Something weird's going on with my credit report. Call me back, please. Then I called the bank that had supposedly issued the loan, hoping to find out how I'd been approved without my knowledge. After an eternity of hold music, an agent came on. I explained that this debt was fraudulent, that I didn't apply for any loan. She recited standard lines. They'd open an investigation. I'd need to fill out paperwork, maybe submit a police report. My chest tightened. A police report meant accusing someone of identity theft. The agent asked me to confirm my personal details, which I did. I could almost hear the suspicion in her silence. It was obvious that as far as their records were concerned, I was the borrower. I lay awake that night, every muscle tense, listening to the whir of my ceiling fan. My mind was on a loop. If my mom really did this, how could she stoop so low? If she hadn't, then who was behind it? My phone was silent. She never called back. The next day, I forced myself to go to work at the diner, slapping on a fake smile as I took orders and poured coffee. Between customers, I checked my phone for missed calls. Still nothing. I replayed 100 interactions with my mom in my head, trying to see if I'd missed any red flags. Later that evening, after my shift, she finally called. Her voice was shaky. "Rachel, hey, I got your messages," she said, sounding out of breath. I wasn't sure if it was because she was anxious or because she'd been rushing around. I told her directly about the call from the debt collector. She was quiet for a moment, then tried to laugh it off. "That's weird," she mumbled. "You sure it's not a scam?" Her evasiveness made my heart sink. I pushed harder, mentioning the exact amount, the bank's name, the delinquency. She paused again. I heard her inhale sharply. "I was going to tell you," she started, "but things got out of control." My throat went dry. She admitted, stumbling over her words, that she'd applied for the loan under my name because her own credit was ruined and she couldn't get approved anywhere else. "I'm sorry," she said in a defensive tone, like she expected me to brush it off as no big deal. "I just needed to buy some time. I planned to pay it back, but then everything spiraled. You know how it is." Anger and betrayal surged in me so violently that my cheeks burned. "Mom, that's fraud," I choked out. "How could you do this to me?" Her defensive tone turned to a growl. "Don't get dramatic, Rachel. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. You can't spare a little help for your mother?" She sounded resentful, like I was the villain for being upset. I could barely speak. We argued in circles. My mother insisted it wasn't that big of a deal, that she'd figure it out eventually, that I just needed to relax. And when I refused to calm down, she flipped the script, calling me selfish for not offering to cover the overdue amounts. We ended the call in a flurry of accusations, and I was left trembling on my couch, tears pricking at my eyes. The next day, the collection agency called again, demanding immediate payment or at least a good faith deposit. I felt numb, explaining once more that this was a fraudulent account. They said they would note my dispute, but also warned me that legally I was still on the hook until proven otherwise. My fury mounted. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how thoroughly my mom had trapped me. If I didn't pay, it would destroy my fledgling credit score and possibly lead to wage garnishments or even a lawsuit. If I did pay, I'd be acknowledging a debt that wasn't mine and enabling her. Worst of all was the emotional toll. How do you process a betrayal from the very person who raised you? Over the following week, I hardly slept. I'd stare at the ceiling, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. I saw a future in which I was blacklisted by banks, kicked out of my apartment, forced to declare bankruptcy. My best friend, Ashley, noticed the shadows under my eyes when we met for coffee. Concerned, she asked what was going on. I spilled the whole twisted story, the phone calls, my mother's confessions, the tension, the blame. Ashley's eyebrows shot up so far I thought they'd disappear into her hairline. She grabbed my hand gently. "This isn't okay," she told me. "You can't just brush this off. You have to protect yourself." She suggested contacting a lawyer or going to the police, but the thought of reporting my own mom felt too horrific. My stomach churned. I agreed with her logically, but deep down, I was torn between love and rage, between wanting to save my future and not wanting to destroy my mom's life. Eventually, I mustered the courage to visit my mother in person. She lived in a cramped one-bedroom unit in a low-income housing complex. The whole building smelled like stale cigarettes and microwaved dinners. I knocked on her door, waiting in the dimly lit hallway. When she opened the door, she had dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked older than I remembered. Without any greeting, I stepped inside and demanded we talk. There was a small kitchen table covered in overdue bills, a half-eaten bowl of soup, and empty soda cans. I confronted her. "You've put me in a terrible position. Bill collectors are calling me nonstop. My credit is on the line and I didn't even take this loan." She squirmed in her chair, fiddling with a cigarette lighter. "Look," she began. "I'm sorry, but I had no other way. I was drowning. Don't you understand that I did this for both of us? I'm your mother. I gave you everything when you were little." I remembered plenty of times she'd had money troubles, but never something that directly threw my life into disarray. I tried to keep my voice steady, explaining how serious this was for me, how it could impact my chances of renting a better apartment, getting a car, or even a future mortgage. My mother waved a hand dismissively. "Those are future problems," she countered. "I'm dealing with immediate problems. Bills, rent, groceries. Can't you see how desperate I was?" When I asked if she'd actually tried to pay the monthly installments, she flinched. She admitted she'd missed payments because she had a million other things to handle. That interest had piled up faster than she expected. She assured me she'd get around to it, but the bitterness in her voice, the way she stared me down, suggested she still blamed me for refusing to bail her out. I felt like a twisted ball of guilt and anger as I drove home that evening. I remembered the times she was my only support, like when I got strep throat in 3rd grade and she nursed me back to health with homemade soups, or that time in high school when I didn't have the money for a field trip and she found a way to cover it, even if it meant skipping one of her own bills. But then I remembered a dozen other incidents. Her chain of payday loans, her habit of borrowing money from relatives and never paying it back, her meltdown when I started waiting tables instead of handing over half my paycheck to help with rent. All those memories churned inside me, making me question where the line was between familial obligation and exploitation. Ashley convinced me to speak with a legal aid service that offered free consultations. The lawyer I met, a woman named Teresa, listened to my tale, taking notes. She shook her head with a sympathetic frown. This happens more often than people realize, she said gently. Family fraud is tough because there's an emotional bond, but from a legal standpoint, this is identity theft. She explained that if my mother refused to cooperate, I might have to file a police report to clear my name and restore my credit. The very idea felt like a knife in my gut. Report my own mother? But what if I didn't? I could be stuck with a massive debt I had no way of paying off. Over the next few days, the tension with my mom grew into an icy stalemate. She'd text me occasionally, guilt-tripping me about how alone she felt, how she had no one else to turn to. When I called her out, she'd snap back, "Fine, do what you want. Throw your mother in jail if that makes you feel good." The emotional blackmail made me lose sleep. Was I really being selfish? There were moments I doubted myself. Maybe I should just pay off some of the debt to keep collectors away, I thought. But then reason kicked in. I couldn't even afford to make those payments every month. My own finances were precarious. I had rent, grocery bills, and a meager rainy day fund. One afternoon, I came home from a shift at the diner to find a letter in my mailbox with big red letters stamped on the envelope. URGENT. My hands shook as I tore it open. It was from the collection agency's legal department, warning me that they were preparing to take further action if immediate payment wasn't arranged. They were talking about garnishing wages or even pursuing litigation. A storm of anxiety battered me. I slammed my door shut and slumped to the floor of my living room, my back pressed against the wall. I felt utterly trapped. In a panic, I phoned my mother, but she didn't answer. I left a message begging her to start paying something, anything, because I was the one at risk. Hours later, she finally called back, and we had the worst argument yet. She claimed she had tried to make a payment but was short on rent. She demanded that I step in to fix the problem. I reminded her, voice shaking with anger, that she was the one who took the loan in my name without asking. She responded by calling me ungrateful, reminding me of how she raised me alone, how she'd sacrificed her happiness so I could have a chance at college, even if I'd ended up waitressing before finishing my degree. Her voice cracked, and then she hung up on me, leaving me feeling as though I was an inch tall. That night, I visited Ashley again. We sat in her living room, the TV flickering with some sitcom neither of us was really watching. I told her I was getting close to filing a report. "You have to," Ashley insisted. "She's giving you no choice. It's not about wanting to punish her. It's about saving yourself." Tears pricked my eyes because I hated the truth in that statement. Ashley enveloped me in a hug, and I let myself cry on her shoulder. Afterward, we made tea, and I felt a flicker of resolve forming in my chest. I had to do something. My mother was leaving me no other option. The following day, I took the stack of documents I'd received, the original bank statement, the collection letters, the red ink warnings, along with my credit report, and marched into the local police station. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. I felt dizzy explaining to the officer on duty that my own mother had opened a fraudulent account in my name. He asked me to fill out forms and give a detailed statement, which would be added to a case file. The entire time I trembled. My mouth was dry, my palms sweaty. I was so sure everyone in that station was judging me, thinking I was the world's worst daughter. When I finished, the officer handed me a copy of the report. He was polite, but I sensed his discomfort too. Family fraud isn't pretty. It's messy and heartbreaking. I walked out of the station clutching that piece of paper, feeling a swirling mix of relief and guilt. Relief, because I had taken the step to protect myself. Guilt, because it was my own mother I was protecting myself from. I wish I could say that filing the police report ended the matter quickly. It didn't. The bank launched their investigation. The collection agency kept contacting me, though less frequently, and my mother texted me a string of bitter, angry messages. She said I was destroying our family, that I'd turned my back on her, that I was ungrateful. I blocked her number eventually because I couldn't handle the daily onslaught. She left me voicemails that veered between sobbing apologies and fiery condemnations. I heard her say, "I needed you, and you threw me to the wolves." And then she'd hang up. Each time, I felt a knot of sorrow twist inside me. Meanwhile, legal aid helped me send official dispute letters to the credit bureaus. Slowly, an investigation by the bank validated my claim. My mother had used my personal information without my authorization. She'd left an e-signature with my name on documents, forging consent. The bank recognized this as fraud, which allowed me to remove the account from my credit report. I should have felt triumphant the day I got the letter confirming the loan was no longer associated with me. But all I felt was hollow. It struck me that in the eyes of the law, my mother had committed a crime. While it protected me financially, it also obliterated any lingering illusions I had that this was just a misunderstanding. During this time, my mother essentially went off the grid. I heard from a distant cousin that she'd moved in with a friend to avoid eviction. When I asked for a phone number or address, the cousin clammed up, saying Mom didn't want me to know. The cousin hinted that my mother was still furious, claiming I'd betrayed her. It hurt, but I also recognized she was lashing out. Maybe she was drowning in shame, or maybe she was still convinced I was at fault. I couldn't be certain. Life stabilized, at least on the surface. I went back to focusing on my job, picking up extra shifts at the diner when I could. The calls from collectors stopped. My credit score slowly began to recover. I felt the weight of constant anxiety lift, but the sadness lingered. I would watch mothers and daughters at the diner. Sometimes I'd serve them pancakes or milkshakes, and I'd feel this sharp ache. That used to be me and Mom. At least in my younger years, laughing about silly things, scraping by but always in it together. Where had it all gone so wrong? About 4 months later, I got a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with my mother's handwriting. It said, "Rachel, you're probably glad you ruined my life. I hope you're happy. I never meant for it to go this far. You're selfish, just like everyone else who turned their back on me. Don't bother trying to contact me. Enjoy your perfect little credit score." It was equal parts bitter, accusatory, and pathetic. My hands trembled as I read it, and I sat on my bed staring at the wall for a long time afterward, trying to process the swirl of anger, hurt, and pity I felt for her. Ashley encouraged me to see a therapist to process the trauma. For a while, I resisted. I was barely making ends meet, and therapy felt like a luxury. But the emotional toll was too great, and I found a counselor who offered a sliding scale fee. Talking about the betrayal helped me see that I wasn't obligated to sacrifice my future for the sake of someone else's financial recklessness, no matter if that someone was my own mother. I grieved the relationship, cried over memories of better times, but gradually I felt less consumed by guilt. I started to rebuild my sense of self-worth, reminding myself that I had every right to protect myself from devastating debt. It wasn't until nearly a year later that I heard from my mom again. She called out of the blue from a new number, her tone subdued. I felt a jolt of adrenaline, uncertain whether I should even pick up. But I answered, out of a lingering hope that she might be willing to reconcile. She told me she was staying in a cramped apartment on the other side of town, that she'd found a part-time job, and that she was exhausted. She didn't apologize exactly, but she sounded deflated, like someone who'd been crushed by life. "I just wanted to say hi," she mumbled. My chest tightened. I realized I still loved her, despite everything. We had a tense conversation, never directly addressing the fraud or the fallout. She asked if I was still mad, like it was a small argument over who forgot to do laundry. I swallowed my hurt. "It's complicated," I told her. "You hurt me a lot?" She sighed, said she was tired of fighting, that she just wanted to put it behind us. Part of me wanted that too, but I didn't know how to bridge the ocean between us. We ended the call on a strangely cordial note, promising to talk again soon, though we both knew it might not happen. It's been another few months now. Sometimes I think about that phone call in the grocery store aisle, the moment my entire world shifted. I still get anxious when unknown numbers call. I still feel a pang whenever friends talk about leaning on their parents for support. But I also know that I did what I had to do. My mother might label me as selfish forever, but I've come to terms with the fact that standing up for myself doesn't make me a bad daughter. Boundaries are necessary even in the face of filial love. I can't predict the future. Maybe one day my mom and I will find a way to truly mend our relationship, but for now, I'm cautious, keeping a safe distance. The betrayal still stings. Every so often, it resurfaces in the form of old memories, or I'll stumble on an old photo of us laughing in better times and feel that familiar mix of rage and sorrow. Yet I remind myself that people aren't perfect, and sometimes the people we expect to protect us are the ones who drag us into the deepest mess. Forgiveness, if it comes, will be on my terms and only when I feel it won't put me at risk again. When I look back on it all, I'm still shocked at how quickly things escalated. A single phone call exposed the truth. My mother had crossed a line, forging my name and burdening me with a debt I never asked for. Her reaction, to call me selfish for refusing to help pay it back, revealed just how lost she was in her own justifications. It still hurts, but I've grown from the experience. I refuse to let it define me entirely. It's a part of my story, but it's not the whole story. I'm determined to keep building a life for myself, one free from her debt, her manipulations, and the crushing weight of guilt that used to keep me awake at night. Sometimes I still feel a pang of longing for a normal mother-daughter bond, but I've learned you can't force people to respect boundaries. You can only set them, protect them, and decide how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice. My mom might always see me as the ungrateful child who chose self-preservation over loyalty, but in my heart, I know I made the only choice I could to save myself from a lifetime of financial ruin. And, just as importantly, from the toxic cycle her choices kept spinning. If that makes me selfish in her eyes, then so be it. I'll carry that label if it means I can finally stand on my own 2 feet, ready to shape my own future, unburdened by someone else's debt.